getting this going, but now we're good to go. Inshallah, we'll be covering the topic of today of this halaqah. This lecture is to talk about responsible finance, and particularly finance as it pertains to young professionals, as it is in the Qur'an, and specifically around the topics of spending, investing, and riba. Right now, these are all very, very nice topics. And if you can spend a lot of time on each of them. You can spend a lot of time talking about spending. You can spend a lot of time talking about how we are taught about investing, and so on and so forth. But I'll try to touch base on each of these points a little bit, and then open up the floor for question and answers. We are a little bit of in a logistical crunch, in the sense that Maghrib is not too much after right now. So what we will do is we're probably going to go for a little bit, then break from Maghrib, and then come back inshallah for any question and answers. All right, let me get started. Firstly, about spending, right? So spending in the sense of you're spending on people, right? You're spending on people, and you're spending on yourself. The question that's to be asked is, what is the financial liability of a believer, right? What is the financial liability of a believer? And is the financial liability of a believer different for a man and as compared to a woman? Like, does the gender make it so that the financial liabilities are different? What do you think the answer is? If you can type the answer, yes or no. Is it different, financial liabilities for men and women in Islam? Different, yes or no? Maybe you can mention something. Sartar says yes, that is. Any other thoughts? Anybody else? Oh, sorry. Aha. So it is in fact different. Okay. The genders play a role in the financial responsibility, the liability that we carry. And we'll look into this inshallah right now. I'll display my screen for you inshallah, and let me know if you see it inshallah. I'm showing you this document. This document was actually on the LMM site. You could have accessed that there as well if you wanted to. This is a document that I put together speaking about the ayat of Qur'an that talk about financial liabilities, about investing, about riba, all that stuff. The first part of it we've covered before, so I'm not going to go through that again. But this second part we haven't done before, so I'm going to talk about that now, inshallah. The answer that the question that I asked about different liabilities or different responsibilities for different genders, the answer actually is yes. Islamically, your gender plays a role in how you are held accountable for your money. Okay, and there is some evidence for that. Firstly, we speak about something that applies across the board to both genders. What applies to both genders is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling us, وَلَا تَجْعَلْ يَدَكَ مَغْلُولَةً إِلَىٰ عُنُقِكَ وَلَا تَبْسُطْهَا كُلَّ الْبَسْطِ فَتَقْعُدَ مَلُومًا مَحْسُورًا. Be neither miserly nor so open-handed that you suffer reproach and become destitute. This ayah is giving us our spending policy in Islam for both genders. You are supposed to spend. You are supposed to spend within a reasonable means. Spending on this spending is open-ended. It could be spending on anything that is considered halal and acceptable. All right, but you're supposed to spend in a manner that it doesn't become israf. It's not something that you are wasting your wealth, right? You are, giving it, basically you are blowing it on things that you shouldn't be doing so, right? That is called being extremely open-handed. وَلَا تَبْسُطْهَا كُلَّ الْبَسْطِ. And at the other end of the spectrum, don't be extremely miserly, just hoarding, not even spending according to what's required, according to what's nice. And that also is a bad mindset. The Qur'an says, خَيْرُ الْأُمُورِ أَوْسَطُهَا. The best path or the best course of action is the one that is balanced And this ayah gives us that balanced approach to spending. This applies, by the way, brothers and sisters, to our spending when it comes to our purchases, right? What kind of car should I purchase? This is a good ayah. It talks about that. It applies to what kind of, for example, lifestyle I want to live, right? This ayah, applies to that. It actually, kind of is irrelevant of how much money you have, right? You can have a lot of money and still live this lifestyle, right? Uh, as long as that uh, you know that contentment can be found. And this is what the ayah is saying, that if you are going to err on the edges of the spectrum, you are going to inevitably become either maluman or mahsuran. Malum, you're going to be blameworthy, right? If you are going to err on the edge of being extremely miserly, not spending, penny pinching, you're probably going to be blameworthy. And you're going to be trapped because the necessities that you want are not there. Maybe you missed on certain things that you now regret missing on, right? So that is, in that case, applicable. And on the flip side, if a person has spent too much of their wealth or squandered too much of it, then same thing can apply. Maluman mahsura, they're blameworthy because they squandered their wealth. And mahsur, they're again trapped because now they probably have to go and figure out a way to make their ends meet and whatnot. So the ayah gives a very beautiful understanding about spending, and that is a beautiful rule for us to follow. This is irrespective of the gender. Okay. Also very important is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that says, دينار أنفقته في سبيل الله ودينار أنفقته في رقبة ودينار تصدقت به على مسكين ودينار أنفقته على أهلك أعظمها أجرا الذي أنفقته على أهلك. Okay, very beautiful hadith. The Prophet is saying, he's giving you four scenarios here. Okay, dinarun, scenario 1, dinarun, scenario 2, dinarun 3, dinarun 4. He's giving 4 examples of 4 scenarios. Which one is best? That's the question he wants to ask us. Okay, dinarun, number 1, you spend for the sake of Allah, right? Charity for the sake of Allah. You want nothing from it. All you want is some good is done for the Muslim community. Some good is done, at the masjid. Whatever counts as the cause of God. That's number 1. Okay. Number 2 is dinarun anfaqtahu fi raqaba, a wealth spent to free a slave. Number 3, dinarun tasaddaqta bihi ala miskin, a wealth spent to help a poor person who needs help. Number 4, dinarun anfaqtahu ala ahlik, a wealth that's spent on family. Which of these 4 is the best spending or best use of your money? What do you think, people? Which of these 4 is the best use of your money? You can type in the chat, but the answer also is there. It is the one on your family, number 4 on the list. Yeah, number 4 on the list, the one you spend on your family. That is the one that has the most ajr in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How incredible is that? That a person who takes care of their family gets more ajr for doing that than if they were to take care of a poor person, than if they were to set a person free by buying their freedom from slavery, or if they were to spend money in the cause of God, something that helps the religion. Among all of these cases, the best case is taking care of your family, and this is a hadith in Sahih Muslim, right? So again, the Prophet is giving us, the Qur'an and the Sunnah are giving us the mindset of how we have to prioritize spending. Our priorities on spending has to be, number 1, our obligatory financial liabilities. And on the top of that list, financial liabilities is your family, your direct family. We are going to break for Maghrib. Yes, is it time for Maghrib yet? It's not Maghrib yet. Okay. How about we'll break at 7:30? Is that okay, Mr. Hajar? All right. Okay. Alhamdulillah. So, Here is the thing, you guys. The most, like the number one thing on the priority is our obligatory financial liabilities, the people that we have to spend upon. Okay. uh, and thus, who's on that list? That's the question. Let's answer that quickly. Okay. And that question, the answer to that differs from gender to gender. For a man, that would be a person's heirs and his wife. Okay, this is the position of the Hanbali school. In the position of the Shafi'i school, it is the parents, children, and wife. Okay, and the Maliki position here is even more broad, which is male children until they reach the age of marriage, female children until married, and parents only if they are poor, and wife. Okay, so all three of the and I believe also that this is the Shafi'i position, is also the Hanafi position as well. Okay, all of the schools of jurisprudence agree that for a man, the one that he is always financially liable for is his wife. Okay, he always has to ensure that he is taking care of her needs. This is something that comes, across the board. This is agreed upon. Okay, and this is actually very interesting. If you look at the Quran, I'll show you an ayah of the Quran that speaks about this topic. If you look at uh, uh, this ayah, ayah number 117 of the Quran from ayah 117 of Surah number 20, Surah Taha, speaks about Adam alayhi salam, right? Adam alayhi salam is a man, of course, and his wife is Hawa. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Adam, Adam, Satan is an enemy to you and your wife. Let him not turn you both out of paradise. Huh? Don't let him kick both of you out of paradise. Fatashqa, and thus you come to grief in the singular. The idea being the well-being of the family, the financial responsibility or liability of the family is on the shoulders of the man of the family. Okay, and he has to and then of course on the top of that list is his wife, and he has to ensure that her needs are taken care of. So spending wise, the most important, like the priority, is obligatory financial liabilities, and number one on that list is the wife, or something that is agreed upon between all of the schools of thought. The wife of a person is takes priority over everybody else. Now this is important, you guys. If a person is spending money frivolously, and neglecting the needs of his wife, she's living in a not a very pleasant life, or maybe she's it's not a happy marriage, and it's exacerbated by the good common sense spending that the Quran and Sunnah encourage. That makes matters infinitely worse. That makes matters so much worse. So this is an important aspect for us to understand. Now, the ulama differ after your wife. Who else are you responsible for? So, for example, the Hanbali say all of your heirs. So that's your kids, your grandkids. They're your liability. If for example, if your kids can't take care of your grandkids, then you have to take care of them. Okay, so they're pretty they're pretty precise about it. I like the Maliki position here, actually, even though I have studied Hanbali fiqh and as my in university, and with my sheikh. But I like the Maliki position, which is that male children until they reach the age of marriage, female children until they are married, and parents only if they're poor. So what this means is the man is responsible for the wife at all times, as long as they're married. Okay, for the kids, as long as the kids are adults. Once the kids are adults, they're responsible for themselves. But the boy of the family, the male child, when he is old enough, he's on his own, essentially. The girl, she is on her own when she's married. Okay, and the parents, only if the parents are poor, then the man has to take care of them. So this is the spending priorities that the ulama discuss in light of the Quran and Sunnah as mentioned here. But number one, obviously, is this is the thing, right? The best money you can spend is on your family. And who is it amongst your family? Who are you responsible for? Here is that list. What about a woman? Is a woman responsible for spending on her husband? What do you think? Yes or no, people? Is she like liable in the eyes of Allah? When I say liable, I mean this. Allah can ask that person on the day of judgment, why didn't you spend money? When I say liable, that's what I mean. Okay, not it's like like in the eyes of the people, in the eyes of Allah. Is a woman, can she be held responsible for not spending on her husband? Yes or no? I see a couple of no's. Any other thoughts? The correct answer is, I need like a duff roll here. The correct answer is no. Alhamdulillah. Right? A woman is not liable. She will not be asked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala whether she spent on her husband or not. Okay? The Quran says, فَإِن طِبْنَ لَكُمْ عَنْ شَيْءٍ مِنْهُ نَفْسًا فَكُلُوهُ هَنِيئًا مَرِيئًا. Okay, this is from the very beginning of Surah number 4, Surah An-Nisa. Let's display the ayah to you. And this gives us the principle uh, right here, right? But if they of their own accord remit any part of it to you, then you may make use of it with pleasure and goodwill. This is specifically speaking about the dowry, the mahar, but also generally speaking about the wealth that the woman has, the wife has in this relationship. It's hers to keep. If she remits it, she gives it out of her own accord, then that is actually an act of that's an act of worship for her, and then it's a good thing and there's no problem. But in reality, she's not responsible for it. She's not questioned by Allah for it. And that's the key part. Financially liable, i.e., questioned by Allah, potentially questioned by Allah, possibly questioned by Allah, right? Is she? No, she isn't. All right. What about her kids? All right. So according to the school of Imam Abu Hanifa, and I'll share only one opinion here because the others are more complex. She's responsible for spending on her kids only in the case if the husband passes away, right? Or if the husband is poor, right? And this is, I think, like a good middle ground. If, for example, the husband is, he passes away, obviously she is now going to take care of her family, and now she could be asked by Allah about this. Or if the husband is poor and, poor and let's put it this way, not a bum. Right? He's not just like a deadbeat husband. He's trying but can't do it, can't make it. Okay? In that case, and she has money or she could earn, then yes, and according to Imam Abu Hanifa, she should be spending on her husband. And also for her parents, is it her responsibility? Well, if they are poor, she shares responsibility equally with the siblings. Because when it comes to parents, right, it's not only the responsibility of the boys of the family, right? It is according to Imam Abu Hanifa, it's something that's a responsibility shared among the genders. But the qualifier that Imam Abu Hanifa puts on this, and Imam Malik also, is that if they are poor, right? So that is number one about spending. Yes, priorities. What is it that we spend on? Number one, most importantly, this is the flyer. I'll show it to you again. Right? Spending in Islam is according to the Qur'an Sunnah. The golden rule is do not err on the side of extremes. Be modest and be balanced. Number one. Number two, the best money you can spend is the money you spend on your family. Number three, who is your family? Priorities is given to a person's for a man. The priority is given to his wife, and then kids. For a woman, she actually does not have a liability in the eyes of Allah towards anybody. It is hers to keep. And at the same time, the responsibility is shared in certain cases where you are, if like, the husband passes away or the parents are poor. and so on and so forth. Okay. Also in this list is, of course, spending priorities is zakat is next. After you've taken care of your family, provided for them. Taking care of family means food, water, shelter, necessities of life. The scholars in the past would say, the husband has to provide a maid. Uh, not today, brother. Please, please. We can't do that. We can barely make rent here. But back in the day, they would say that, right? Allowance for medicine and books. So they give according to like every school of thought gives like a set of opinions based on the time and place. In reality, the Quran Sunnah does not restrict it. It leaves the matter in the hands of the people. Whatever is acceptable, whatever is common sense, right? What's called al-urf. Okay, so that is the obligatory spending. Also, zakat is the next on the list. You have to pay your zakat. You can't be like pledging money in the masjid or pledging money for causes, saying, "Yeah, I'll donate," but you have neglected your zakat, and the zakat comes first. Next on that is philanthropy. This is sadaqah, optional philanthropy. That is something you do, but as you see, that should not compromise the ones above. It should not compromise a person's zakat. It should definitely not compromise their financial liabilities that they are, that's obligatory for them. Cannot do that. Yes. So this is how the Quran and Sunnah is out for us. And at the end of it all comes saving and investing. All right, we are in the time of Maghrib right now. What I'll do is, so there's a lot of information of zakat here, which I won't get into. Zakat workshop is a different thing. I will touch upon a little bit about sadaqah, if you give me a few moments. And I do want to touch a little bit about investing. And then after Maghrib, I'll talk a lot about riba, mashallah. Okay, so sadaqah, of course, is amazing. Sadaqah, but sadaqah, remember, list of priorities is number 3. What does the Quran say about sadaqah? قُلِ الْعَفْوَ. Whatever is surplus to your needs, that is what you spend in sadaqah. That is a key part. Al-afu is like, they would say is like ma fadula min al-ta'am, for example, like leftover food. You ate, you're full, alhamdulillah. Now there is leftovers. That's what the old Arabs would say is afu. Now, subhanallah, that is the mindset that we're supposed to have for sadaqah. You are, eating, i.e. you're taking care of your needs, and you're full, alhamdulillah, and everybody around you, their family is full. Now what's left, you can give from that for sadaqah. And that is a beautiful way of thinking about sadaqah. This is important, you guys, because oftentimes we are put in compromising situations by, unfortunately, Islamic institutions asking for money, almost, coalescing money out of us. And, frankly speaking, the Quran and Sunnah are very clear on the matter that sadaqah is given from what is what's left over, what's surplus. Now, should you give as much as you can? Yes, but from the surplus, should you ensure that the money you have given is not compromising the well-being of your family and is not affecting your zakat payments? Yes, because those are more important. And keep in mind, the best money, like the hadith that we studied before, is the money you spend on your family. So this is how the Quran and Sunnah teaches this balanced approach. And quite often, like, I see this imbalance in the way funds are raised at masajid and whatnot, right? Where you're kind of just like asked to be reckless. Just give, brother, just give, inshallah, everything will be okay. Sure, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a razaq, but keep in mind, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says, spend from the surplus, right? Spend in a balanced way. Don't spend in a way where you're excessive or miserly. So all the ayat have to be considered together. So that is spending. Also, I'd like to highlight to you about spending is spending should be given, right? Like sadaqah is to be given to, it's a beautiful thing. The one who gives it despite love for it, they give it away to their relatives, to orphans, to the very poor, to the travelers, to those who ask for charity, to set slaves free, right? It is given to people in need. And even in the people of need, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, start with your family. Start with your family. And this is a beautiful thing about our religion, that it encourages us to take care of family even when or even if family doesn't take care of us. This is a very beautiful, very empowering thing. We don't cut off our ties of family just because of disagreements. Hmm? Uh, they are blood. Allah has joined us by blood, and we take care of that. So even when spending out of surplus, top of the list, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts your relatives, and I think that is worth us for us to ponder and reflect on that. Okay, and of course, spending in the sake for the sake of Allah is such an important thing that Allah says you really cannot attain the peak of righteousness until you're able to do so. Right, to let go of the thing you love the most for the sake of Allah, only then you attain righteousness, and that is that. All right. Now, also about let me okay, let's talk about actually investing and riba after Salatul Maghrib. Is that okay? And brother, sister Hajar, I'll answer your question afterwards if that's all right. Yes, inshallah. Tayyib. What we're gonna do is I'm gonna pause the. I'm gonna turn off my camera and my microphone, but I'm gonna leave the screen share on, inshallah, and then we will come back for it. Sounds good, people? Say yes or no. Blink once if you're alive. Big. All right, thank you very much. Okay, so we're gonna take a Maghrib break, and we will be right back. All right, inshallah. Jazakumullahu khairan. I will see you all shortly. Let's get back to discussing, inshallah, the idea now of saving, investing, and accumulating wealth. Okay, and obviously related to that, we'll come to the idea of a riba, right? Interest. Very, very important topic. I'll do the question and answers all together at the end, if that's all right with the people. Okay, so here we are talking about saving, investing, and accumulating wealth. The question that I want to ask you all, right? The question I want to ask you is money evil? So, not a rhetorical question. I'm serious about that question, actually. Is money evil? What do you people think? Yes or no? The answer, of course, is no. We don't consider money to be inherently evil. Okay? Can money be used for evil? Right? Can money also be used for good? Of course, yes. This is the key part of our understanding. We don't consider wealth, luxury, as good or bad in its own right. We don't consider, or we don't think that when we have, a nice life, that is Allah liking us, or if you don't have a nice life, that's Allah hating us. Our financial circumstances have nothing to do with our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the key part about Islam. Okay? Surah Al-Fajr, you know Surah Al-Fajr, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Fajr, وَأَمَّا الْإِنسَانُ إِذَا مَا ابْتَلَاهُ رَبُّهُ فَأَكْرَمَهُ وَنَعَّمَهُ فَيَقُولُ what? فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي أَكْرَمَنِي. When you read it, for Qur'an, you stop at akraman, like that. I'll show you the ayah in a sec here. When his Lord tests him through honor and blessings, he says, my Lord has honored me. وَأَمَّا الْإِنسَانُ إِذَا مَا ابْتَلَاهُ رَبُّهُ. But when he tests him by straightening his means of livelihood, restricting the means of livelihood, he says, فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي أَهَانَنِي. My Lord has disgraced me. This is actually not how we're supposed to look at wealth. This is not how we're supposed to look at our financial standing. It has nothing to do with our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? And thus, the things that are part of our financial well-being, money, assets, etc., are not good or evil inherently. You see the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says here, إِذَا مَبْتَلَاهُ ibtalahu. We consider both when Allah gives a test and Allah takes away a test. We consider both of those to be tests. Tests him by straightening, tests him by giving. And giving doesn't mean that Allah has honored, and taking away doesn't mean that Allah has humiliated. This is, this is not sports. This is not like, a zero-sum game. Both of those are tests. Both of those are tests. What we are taught is when you are given, it's a test of thankfulness. When something is taken away, it's a test of patience. It's a test of your graciousness. How gracious are you? How emotional are you? All of those things get tested when something is restricted. So that is what we consider, right? It is not obviously evil, and accumulating wealth isn't then de facto sinful. The problem becomes if accumulating wealth turns into what? An obsession. And you start to consider that accumulation, or that accumulation starts to have an effect on the way you view the world. What does that mean? وَتَأْكُلُونَ التُّرَاثَ أَكْلًا لَمَّا وَتُحِبُّونَ الْمَالَ حُبًّا جَمًّا. And you have a love of wealth which can never be satisfied. That's where the problem lies. In accumulation, where it becomes it becomes just a thirst that is unquenchable. An appetite that can never be satisfied. حُبًّا جَمًّا. That is when accumulating wealth becomes sinful. But if a person is to accumulate wealth and they are giving sadaqah and they're giving zakat, accumulating wealth while giving zakat on the wealth, that is in no way sinful. That is not sinful in any way, shape, or form. Alhamdulillah, they're actually in the clear. And I wanted to point out here that there's a word that in the translation you say, they ask you what they should give. Say whatever you give should be for parents, right? Give. That word give mean khayrin in Arabic in the Qur'an is khayrin here in this text. The Tabari says khayr in the ayah means wealth. So in khayr, the word itself means goodness. So here what's interesting is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying that wealth, when you're spending it in the right place, wealth in the right hands is khayr, is goodness. Wealth in the right hands is goodness. So that is why we're encouraged to save, and we're encouraged to invest, to grow our savings. Because in the hands of a good person, in the hands of a righteous person, that wealth is khayr. That wealth is a source of goodness. Okay? Now, being rich is a mindset. Ghani is the word in Arabic for rich. But ghani is also someone who is, in fact, in reality, free from want. One of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Ghani, the one who is free from all needs, completely self-sufficient. So here for us in Islam, we're taught that wealth and being wealthy isn't about your bank balance. It's actually a mindset. You're one who isn't shackled by the love of wealth. You're not judging your value by your net worth. Your contribution to society isn't judged by how much money you make. No, that's part of who you are. That's not who you are. Ghina and ghani is somebody who is free from want, is sufficient. In other words, reliant on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and happy with what Allah has given. The Prophet has said, لَيْسَ الْغِنَى عَنْ كَثْرَةِ الْعَرَضِ وَلَكِنَّ الْغِنَى غِنَى النَّفْسِ. The Prophet said that wealth isn't having a lot of possessions, rather wealth is being content. So this is a beautiful thing for us to consider. Now, I wrote down actually some wealthy companions. Zubair ibn Al-Awwam had an inheritance of 40 million to 50 million, probably dirham, silver coins, right? Which works out to about $59 million. USD. Okay, in today's terms, that was his inheritance. That's what he left when he passed away. And Zubair is one of the top 10 companions. And many others like Abdurrahman ibn Auf and Uthman ibn Affan, extremely wealthy, lived wealthy, died wealthy, and were the best of the people of the Sahaba, clearly showing that accumulating wealth is not a problem. The problem is not in accumulating wealth. The problem is not in saving wealth. The problem is when you become attached to it. The love of it is, just unquenchable. That is when it becomes a problematic situation. Okay, so that is a word or two on saving and accumulating. What about investing, right? Does the Prophet tell us something about investing? Does the Quran say something about investing? Should we invest? Should we not invest? Can I just keep my money under my pillow, or something, or under my mattress? What should I do? Well, the Prophet says in an authentic narration that ألا من ولي يتيما له مال فليتجر فيه حتى ولا يتركه حتى تأكله الصدقة. The legal guardian of an orphan should invest the orphan's inheritance, lest it's consumed by zakat payments. I'm going to break this hadith down for you. Okay, I want you to pay attention to me. Okay, so ألا من ولي يتيما. Okay, a yatim is what? An adult or a child? Tell me, people. Adult or child? A yatim is the child. Correct. Is this child that is an orphan able to, can you hand over the inheritance of this child to this child? Hey, Abdullah, in grade 4, here is $1 million your dad left you. This is your God-given right, your inheritance, right? Your inheritance is your God-given right. Hey, Abdullah, here it is. Can you give that to like 9-year-old Abdullah or 10-year-old Fatima? Islamic, is that allowed? Yes or no? In fact, the answer is no. You cannot give the orphan's wealth to the orphan until the orphan has grown up. Okay? Once the orphan grows up is also something that is a topic of discussion, but once they have grown up, that is when they inherit their wealth. As a child, they don't inherit their wealth. Who gets to keep their wealth? Who do you think? The guardian. Excellent. Jazakumullah khairan. The guardian. Wali. The wali. The guardian is generally a family member. Okay? The Quran, by the way, warns very significantly about consuming the wealth of an orphan, by the way. Okay? Do you know why the Quran does so? I mean, of course, Allah knows all the wisdom behind it. But one of the chief reasons why the Quran is so particular about the orphans' money, right? Firstly, it says, keep a close check on the orphans till they attain the age of marriage. That is when they're old enough. And then when you find them to be mature mind, key point, right? Anastu minhum rushdan. They're, of mature mind. Then you give them their property, hand over their property to them, right? This, 19-year-old is not, maybe he's a mature, young man or a young woman, okay? But maybe he's a bum. So you give him his $1 million inheritance and he goes and he blows it on some random car, okay? That, now actually, the fault of that is actually the guardian. The guardian needs to check on the maturity of this individual. Right? It's the responsibility of the guardian. The guardian is also told, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَأْكُلُونَ أَمْوَالَ الْيَتَامَى ظُلْمًا. Those who consume the property of the orphans unjustly are actually swallowing fire into their bellies. And soon they will burn in the blazing flame. This is a scary image. There's fire on the inside. The money you're consuming, it's like a piece of the fire of hell you're consuming. And then there's fire on the outside that you will be burned in. That's a very scary scene. Why is this the threat so devastating? Because an orphan is like the uncle, the guardian is like the uncle. The guardian is like a close relative. Someone who could always say, I'm doing it for the best interest of the child. And nobody really can dispute him on that, right? So it's very easy for this person, an adult with power and leverage, to exploit the child and his money or her money. And that is why the orphan's guardian has been warned so severely, and the responsibility on the shoulders is so grave. You have to make sure you're just. You have to make sure when you hand over the money to the orphan is, of mature mind. This is a responsibility unlike basically any other responsibility. That's a very heavy responsibility. Now, part of that responsibility is what? Part of that responsibility is to make sure that the inheritance of this child, while you're waiting to give it to the child, while you're waiting for the child to grow up, does not reduce in value. How can it get reduced in value? How can money sitting around get reduced in value? There's two ways. Number one, which you might know, inflation. Very good. Inflation is going to eat away on that wealth, right? And number two, as Brother Khalid is saying, is zakat. All right, imagine a child had an inheritance of $100,000. Year one, 2.5% of it's gone. Okay, so where's my calculator? Had $100,000 worth of inheritance. Year one, it is now 97,500. Year two, it is now 95. Oh, sorry. Year two, it is now 95,000. Okay. Uh, Year three, it is 92,000, and so on and so forth. By the time the child is mature, it's lost so much of its value, right? Yes or no? That is ignoring the inflation. Imagine if you add inflation to this, there's a double whammy, right? This child is losing a lot of his inheritance or her inheritance before they even grow up. Allah musta'an. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ is saying, he is saying that the orphan's guardian should invest the orphan's inheritance, lest it's consumed by zakat payments. And this idea, this principle applies to all of us as well. We should invest our savings as well. It's encouraged, because if you don't, the same thing that is eating away on the orphan's inheritance is going to eat away at your savings. Inflation and zakat. Yes or no? You with me, people? Likewise, the Prophet said, إِنَّكَ أَن تَذَرَ وَرَثَتَكَ أَغْنِيَاءَ خَيْرٌ مِّنْ أَن تَذَرَهُمْ عَالَةً يَتَكَفَّفُونَ النَّاسِ. Your money that you're saving, guess what? It's going to be the inheritance of your children. In a way, the money you're saving and investing is you're taking care of the inheritance of your own kids. You leaving your heirs wealthy is better than you leaving them poor, dependent on people. So it is extremely, extremely encouraged to save and invest, because you are saving and investing for your kids. You're saving for them. It's like you're the guardian of their wealth, right? That is how we're taught to think about and live our lives. SubhanAllah. Think about that for a minute. Yeah, that is why it is encouraged. But now we have to do this in a halal way. So what is the main last topic that we're going to discuss inshallah today is, what is the main thing that affects the compliance, the Sharia compliance of investing or transactions? The main thing is riba, right there. I dramatically zoomed in at the right time. Alhamdulillah. Riba. There's actually a few items that affect the validity of contracts, financial contracts. There is, for example, ambiguity that is too much ambiguity, too much speculation affects the validity of contracts in Islam. Okay, for example, I'd say, you know what, I'm going to sell you the bird in the sky. Is that acceptable? The transaction in Islam? It's no riba. I'm not borrowing anything. But is that acceptable? Yes or no? All right, give me $100. I'm going to sell you that bird that's in the sky. Is that acceptable? Yes or no? No, assuming even if I hunt, assume like I'm like LeBron James of like bird catchers, okay? Assume that. Can I still do this? I was like, yeah, give me $100, for that bird in the sky, for a bird in the sky. No, you can't. It's only when I've caught the bird, I'm like, hey, here's your bird, give me $100. You see? Or fish, for example. Same idea applies. It's too open-ended. The ambiguity is too much. The scope for exploitation is too much. That's the key part. That's called gharar in Islam. Like, it's a very simple example that I'm trying to give you. There's certain exceptions, obviously. For example, farmers can take money before their produce ripens, because if they were to only cash out once their produce ripens, then how can they actually invest in their land and produce anything for the next year, right? It's going to make things very difficult for them. So farmers have exceptions. Primary producers of something have exceptions in the Sharia, right? So those exceptions are always there. Those details are there. I'm just giving you a very simple, basic example of too much uncertainty making something impermissible. The other thing is riba, right? Riba. Okay, what is a riba? The word riba linguistically actually means what? Does anybody know what riba means linguistically? It actually means for something to grow. Something to grow. That is what the word riba linguistically means. Now, what is interesting is riba is called as such. Interest and usury. Usury is the old school term for it. That's the biblical word for it, usury. It's actually haram in the Bible too, by the way. Okay, the modern day usage of his interest, like in Christian circles, the way they have justified it for themselves is that they say, well, 20% interest or 50% interest, so that's usury. But 3% interest from a bank, that's not usury, that's just interest. That's how they basically have framed it from themselves. Okay, not at least a segment of them. For us, riba, the rule is given to us by the Prophet. The rule is kullu daynin jarra naf'an fahuwa riba. Every loan transaction that brings back benefit, that earns you any privileges, that is riba. Any loan transaction that earns you privileges is riba. So for example, I give Sartaj a loan, okay, and then I tell Sartaj, hey Sartaj, as part of this loan agreement, yeah, I don't want your money, like don't give me more money than what we have agreed on, right? But I want you to always make sure that I am the khatib for the MSA. Okay? Is that a type of benefit that I have acquired from this loan that I have given? Yes. It's not monetary, but it's a benefit. It's something that it's a privilege that I've acquired because I'm in the position of having leverage. So you can't ask for anything more than what you receive. Now, if Sartaj, say I loan him $1,000, okay? He gives me, and I say, Sartaj, you have to give me $1,000 and 1 cent. Is that 1 cent riba? It is riba. Okay. What if Sartaj, I didn't stipulate it in the contract, but he's a good guy, mashallah. So I say, hey Sartaj, here's $1,000 loan. And he comes back and he says, Jazakallah khair, here's your $1,000 back, and here's $100 a gift from me. Is that riba? That's not riba, right? Because that is a person doing it out of their own choice. They were not compelled. They were not handcuffed in that contract. They were doing it out of their own choice. So that's the basic idea of riba, that it is to be anything that is beneficial, any privilege that's acquired because of giving a loan to somebody, that is riba, monetary or otherwise. Okay, that is that. Now let us consider inflation will come to the khalid in a sec. Let us consider something that the Qur'an says, which is For they say buying and selling is only a kind of usury. It's only a type of interest. Okay. وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَا. This ayah is a very critical ayah, or this part of the ayah is very critical. God has made trade lawful and made riba, interest, unlawful. Okay, so this is our principle when it comes to Islamic transactions. Anything, and if you give money as a loan, you can't expect anything from it. If you are partnering in a deal, if there's a purchase agreement, then you can make money from it. Are you clear on this? Loans, no money to be made. Purchasing or buying and selling, money can be made from it. All right. In fact, Islamically, there's 3 types of contracts. All contracts come under 3 categories: loan contract or debt contract, a lease contract, and a trade. In a loan contract, you cannot make any money because it is supposed to be only for the sake of helping that person, and any other benefits are considered to be riba. And you can actually say, okay, I have to wire you money and it'll cost me $30, so give me that $30. That's not a problem. Any fees or expenses you incur, we'll talk about inflation in a little bit, okay? But anything on top that you stipulate, any benefit, completely out of bounds, that's loans, okay? Number 2, lease contracts. You can make money through leasing or renting, right? That's completely acceptable, alhamdulillah. And there is no problem with that. And of course, third one is selling something. You're not, the person is not purchasing a service or renting a home or renting a car from you. No, they're actually acquiring that asset from you. From that as well, you can make money by selling. So those 2 things is where there is the opportunity to make profit. In loans, there is no profit. That is considered to be a riba. Okay, let's give a simple example. Okay, say I want to purchase a car that is $10,000. All right, now I go to the bank and I say, loan me $10,000, and they give me the $10,000 on just as a simple, 10% interest rate. Okay, and just again, I'm not compounding it or anything. Very simple, not compounded 10% interest rate. So how much do I owe them at the end of my term? I owe them $11,000. Okay, the $1,000 of interest and $10,000 as principal. All right, that is riba because it's a loan contract. But now assume I went to a person, okay, and I said, look, I want you to purchase this car for me. Let's do it as an Islamic transaction. All right, let's do it. So he says, you know what? I want to make $1,000 from this transaction. All right. So I'm going to buy the car for $10,000, which is the price. I'm going to buy it in cash. Okay. And I'm going to sell the car to you for $11,000. And you pay this because you are paying me over time. I am going to stipulate that, you buy it for $11,000, and then the monthly payments, we can make a schedule for it. So I bought it for 10. I sold it to this person for 11,000, and they pay me monthly payments to purchase from me. Okay, it's a trade. It's a purchase agreement. I made $1,000. Is that riba? Yes or no? Is this example riba? You say technically no, but I don't see the difference. Okay. The difference is in the first example. See, what's the same? The same is the money I made. Loaning with interest is $1,000. Buying a commodity and selling it for a higher price is the same thing, right? It's I make $1,000 on it. So there's no difference in the amount of money I made. Yes or no, people?
Yes.
But is there a difference? Is there a difference in the nature of the contract.
Yes.
There's a difference. The first contract is a loan contract. I gave money and I'm making money on money. The other one, I have acquired an asset, sold that asset to you, and made money from that transaction. And that is where my profit lies. Now, what's the difference? Okay, if I have loaned you money, liability is on your head, right? Liability is almost entirely, if not entirely, on your head. Whereas if I have purchased the asset in the trade, I am partnering in some of the liability, right? I have skin in the game that's more than what I would have if I was to just loan you money. That, and this is a very simple example, right? I'm trying to simplify it, but that's fundamentally the difference between debt contracts and purchase agreements. Where in a purchase agreement, in a commodity that's being sold, both parties have something at stake. The risk is shared, the rewards are shared. Maybe there's more reward on one party, less on the other. But there's some level of partnership. Whereas for a loan, the person who is taking the loan is on the hook. And that is actually the problem is with the system. It's not just like one or two transactions. Making this systemic, as you can see, leads to the gross inequality of wealth. Gross inequality of wealth. Where the one who has money can make a lot of money, compounding, and the one who is poor has to keep it's like climbing uphill. Maybe he'll make it to the top of the hill, right? He slips, so he falls all the way down. Right? It's a very unfair game. And all of the shari'ahs that Allah has sent, all revelation have warned against it explicitly because it is exploitative, right? The sharia warns against things that are exploitative, whether that is a uncle exploiting his nephew who's an orphan, or whether it is a big bank exploiting a whole economy. It doesn't matter. Exploitation is going to cause problems because power and leverage, when they are concentrated, cause a lack of accountability and cause more problems. You see, so I think Adam Smith said, is that the concentration of power leads to the concentration of wealth. Leads to a concentration of power, and then that leads to more concentration of wealth, which leads to more concentration of power, and so on and so forth. The cycle perpetuates, and it's almost like the person becomes too big to fail, too just above all laws and regulations. And to nip that in the bud, these rules have been set by the Sharia. So a simple example, there's a lot more obviously to discuss in this, but I wanted to share that with you. The Qur'an speaks explicitly about making money through trade, but don't make money through loans. What does that look like for us? For example, you can invest in stocks. Stocks are, by and large, they are purchasing a commodity. You're purchasing a piece of a company. Whereas if I was to purchase a GIC product, a bond, that is a loan. If I was to short a stock, right? Now I have borrowed, and then I will sell at a price that makes sense for me. Those kind of transactions are unacceptable. But in making money through investments is fine. Halal mortgages, yes, that's the basic premise behind halal mortgages. It takes the contract from being a debt contract and makes it into a purchase trade contract. That's the idea there as well. In both cases, you can make money. Making money is not the problem, right? Because Allah says, وَأَحَلَّ اللَّهُ الْبَيْعَ وَحَرَّمَ الرِّبَا. Allah has made trade lawful. Making money is not a problem. The problem is a riba, which is exploitative, puts the little man under the pump, under the thumb of the big guy. Right? So that, folks, is the basic ideas. Inshallah, we can open up the floor to questions. Bi'idhnillah ta'ala. And I'm actually going to turn off the Facebook feed. I'll keep the questions for the Zoom call. Inshallah ta'ala, jazakumullah khairan for those who tune into the Facebook Live. But if you'd like to join the QA, I'd like you to please come join the Zoom call, inshallah. Barakallahu fikum. Assalamu alaikum. Questions, let's take them. Some people say we shouldn't pay zakat because we also pay taxes to the Canadian government, and that during the time of the Prophet, when they paid zakat, this wasn't the case. How would you reply to them that we need to pay zakat and in the same amount? Okay, so that's a very gross misunderstanding of what zakat is and what is, taxes. So fundamentally, what do you pay your taxes on? Your taxes are on what, people? Your income or your net worth? I hope you file your taxes. It's on your income. Yes. Alhamdulillah. What is zakat on? Is it on your income or your net worth? The savings you have. It's on that word. Fundamentally, it's a different transaction, right? So it is not the same in any way. Both are used for the same purpose. In what way, Yasir Taj? Functioning of state and social service. Okay. Here's a key difference. Zakat isn't actually supposed to be used for the functioning of the state. Zakat is actually supposed to be used for very specific categories. The poor, the fuqara wal masakin, those who are employed to administer zakat, amilina alayha, those who are new Muslims, wal muallafati qulubuhum, those who are slaves or who are in prison, those who are in debt, those who are voluntary fighters for the Muslim army, not the army that's state funded, the volunteers who join because there's a need or something, okay? And temporarily someone who's lost their wealth. Very specific categories, right? So zakat isn't meant to be just like taxes can be used for anything. Zakat actually isn't supposed to be used for that. Zakat is used for very specific causes. Now, the Muslims did have taxes, right? They would pay a tax on, for example, the money acquired as a result of a conquest. As an example, that was subject to a tax. That wasn't zakat. Certain Muslim rulers after the Khulafa Rashidun were different in the sense that they didn't really need to do it, but after the Khulafa Rashidun, there were Muslim rulers who enforced taxes to cover expenses, and that was actually completely fine as long as they are not prohibitive or exploitative. You see, zakat is meant fundamentally to eradicate poverty. That's the fundamental use of zakat. Anything else is secondary, right? Now, the state can administer that, or an individual can administer that. That's actually not a problem. Ideal, the state does it, but its fundamental purpose is different. Taxes are used for building an economy, building systems, building, like masajid, or building schools, etc., right? Building infrastructure. You can't do that using zakat. The only time zakat was used for that was when there was literally nobody who was eligible to receive zakat, because poverty was eradicated. In the time of Umar, in the time of Umar Abdul Aziz, instances in history where there was nobody who was a fair recipient of zakat. Also later on in like certain other khilafas, they had a situation where there was like nobody was eligible for zakat. Everybody was rich enough that they didn't receive it. So then the Khalifa would use it for those kind of projects. Wallahu alam, right? On zakat is only paid on assets that are accessible, right? Only accessible assets zakat is paid on, right? So for example, you say own a company that has private share, for example, and you can't sell the share. That's not necessarily zakatable until you're able to cash out those shares. What about, say, for example, my RSPs, are locked in retirement funds. I don't have access to it. I don't pay zakat on it. TFSAs, I have full access to it, so I will pay zakat on it. You see, that's the difference for zakat. Sister Hajar had a question. Sister Hajar had a question. By the way, you guys can unmute yourself. Yeah, yeah, alhamdulillah. She said before, what was it? The brother ever responsible for the sister? Uh, so the brother and sister, the responsibility will extend to the brother, right? For example, for taking care of the sister, if the same stipulations apply that apply to the parents. If the sister's poor and no one's taking care of her, she can't take care of herself, then that falls on her nearest relatives. And that nearest relatives is actually not just the brother, it's actually all siblings that are near to her, right? So the same, if that sister becomes like the parent of the family in the sense that poor and unable to work and completely dependent, then the siblings, all of them share a responsibility to support their sister. Okay, you mentioned about paying for a car or house on a monthly basis. How can you tell the difference between whether it is finance or interest, whether it is let's say whether it's profit or interest? It goes uh I think sister Mawada, is that right? Right? Mawada or Mawadda, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Mawada. Okay. It goes back to the terms of the contract, right? And the nature of the contract. Is it a debt contract? Is it a loan? If that's the case, then it's interest. Is it a trade? If it's a trade, then it's not interest. Sometimes the lines are blurred. Frankly speaking, like we're living in a world where the engine that powers the world economy is interest. So the lines are often blurred. And it's actually sometimes quite difficult to like say, well, is this really interest or profit? Like, how do you discern that, right? And those are complex cases. I give you a simple example, right? But short answer, it goes back to the nature of the contract. Wallahu a'lam. What money you're saving for a specific purpose, like saving up for a house, would you pay zakat on it? Excellent question, Sister Hajar. If you have, say, you guys know new builds, right? Like a new build that a builder is building, yes? People know what that is? Yes or no? I don't want to assume. A new build that a builder is making. Yes? Great. Alhamdulillah. Generally, the way it works is this: you say, yeah, I want to buy this house. They're like, yes, give us, 5%. And then your closing of the house is 1 year down the road, right? 1 year, 9 months, whatever, right? Are you with me, people? If you have signed an agreement like that with a builder, so yes, I will purchase this house from you. And that builder's house, the house could be 1 year, 2 years, whatever. But you signed the agreement, you paid your money to the builder. Then whatever money you have saved up, there is no zakat on it. Do you know why? Because you've committed that money in the future towards something. It's as if that money is not even there. You see? It's as if that money isn't there because you committed it in the future. But the commitment this is a firm commitment. You've signed the contract, you've made the down payment, now you're just waiting for the closing. If it's just I'm saving money to buy a house eventually, I don't really have like an agreement that I've signed, then that money that you're saving, yes, you have to pay zakat on it because you haven't committed it to anything. Does that make sense, inshallah? Alhamdulillah. What about counting inflation? Thank you, Brother Khalid. Inflation is a tricky matter. And I actually don't feel qualified enough to give a very good answer. I asked this question actually of Sheikh Salah As-Sawi, who is the head of AMJA. AMJA is the Association of Muslim Jurists of America. And they were discussing this in one of the conferences. Sheikh Salah's suggestion, this is not mine, I can't actually speak of it with something I can't say that this is what we should do, this is the way forward. Is this something Sheikh Salah, when I asked him, that's what he told me, that costs of inflation should be shared by both parties. So for example, $10,000 is loaned. By the time you return the 10,000, its actual value is 9,000, right? Because inflation has devalued that currency to the point where it's only worth $9,000, right? Now, The $1,000 loss should be shared by both the parties, the one who took the loan and the one who gave the loan. That was Sheikh Salah's opinion. Is there, a possibility that you can put that entirely on the person, on the shoulders of the person who is the debtor, the one who's taking the loan? Yeah, that's a possibility. These are discussions in like a more advanced discussion in Islamic finance. Like I tell you, brother, Sister Hajar, I can't like endorse one of those positions right now because I'm not at that level, right? I'm just sharing with you what someone like Sheikh Salah has said. This is a very specific question, and it should go to like the experts in the field. And there is, scope for discussion. Does that make sense? Like this is something that I can't just like give you my opinion on the matter because it's a complex and involved matter. Yeah. Inshallah. Inflation, this is a simple example of inflation, but what happens to currency? What happens like if you're invested or you had money in like, say like somewhere in the East, and now all of a sudden what happened to the Turkish lira, right? The lira took a nosedive not because of the economy, but because of like foreign policy, right? How do you like, these are very complex problems, right? These are difficult problems, unfortunate problems, but Allah Musta'an, this is the world we live in. But these kind of questions should be, I think, there are excellent questions. Maybe what we'll try to do is try to bring on an expert on the topic next time. Not next time, like maybe next month, but down the road, I think we'll bring on someone like Sheikh Joe Bradford, who is from Houston, Texas, a graduate from Medina, who is an expert on the matter. I think he will be very good for this, talking about these things. He's definitely one who can give an opinion. So no promises, but we'll try to make that happen sometime down the road, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. The student loan debt, this is a very difficult problem. Can you really like work part-time and pay for med school? Probably not, right? Have your parents saved that much money for this? Probably not. Really, the idea of student loans is get rid of it as quickly as you can, right? If you're taking OSAP, try to like do co-op programs so that you don't have to borrow, like minimizing it to the bare minimum, right? I don't borrow from OSAP so you can live in like a, like a nice room in on residence or something, right? Try to save money, okay? Minimize it. And once you're done with it, try to pay it off as fast as possible, right? Now, yeah, but in reality, taxes, saving on taxes is actually second priority for us. First priority is getting rid of the loan, right? In fact, if you're not leveraged so highly, you're actually in a much better financial position. So you can not even like argue that it's actually in your interest to quickly pay off your loans so that your savings can be maximized through investing. Wallahu a'lam. Inshallah khair. So thank you very much, everybody, for coming out. We usually do this once a month, right? Once a month to come together and discuss these topics. I actually want to ask you, do you want to do this again next month in October? October 21st, perhaps? Yes or no? October 21st is good. Yes. What will the topic be? The topic is open-ended. So it's up to you, inshallah. Recommend some topics to me, please. And we can make this happen accordingly.